Talking Cougars is brought to you by Safeway. Come see what's fresh.
Welcome to Talkin' Cougars. I'm Michael Bumpus. That's my QB, Alex Brink, episode 14. And for the second consecutive week, we are talking about a loss. The Cougs go to Corvallis, lose 41-38 in a thriller. It was a close game. The Bees played a game I didn't expect them to play. The Cougs did what I thought they were going to do. But it was a rough one, man. I'm glad I got to sit this one out, B, but you had to live it.
Boy, I sure did, Bump, and it was a tough one. I'm going to tell you now, going into the game, I think there was a lot of talk about how much the Beaver team was struggling, right? 5 straight losses. They hadn't scored more than 20 total points in 3 straight games, shut out by the Air Force Falcons, and you really felt like Washington State was going to get right after a tough loss down in New Mexico. But at the same time, I was cautious, man. You knew it was a hungry Beaver team. It was senior night. They weren't going to lay down. Ben Branson, the starting quarterback from 2022, who was 7-1 as a starter, was getting the start on senior night, right? And it just felt like a little bit of a team of destiny because the Cougs, frankly, made too many mistakes. You know how it goes, Bump. Football at the highest level typically comes down to 5 or 6 plays, right?
Yep.
When you're decently evenly matched. And I think for Washington State, they had some really big plays that didn't go their way. They had some big plays that did go their way, but in the end, too many mistakes, and the defense was just not sharp at all against that Oregon State offense.
Oh, man, we're going to dive into exactly what went wrong with that defense. I think you and I were texting after the game, giving our thoughts to each other. But you know what? It's a loss. You are now 8-3. You're still bowl eligible. You got a chance to win 9 this week. But let's rewind and focus on who we thought stood out in this game. Offense. I assume you're going John Mateer for your offensive MVP.
Well, you know how I feel about QBs, Bump. But one thing we don't talk about enough is how I feel about offensive linemen. They deserve the credit for what the quarterback and running back and wide receivers do most of the time. And in this instance, my MVP is an offensive lineman, and that is Brock Dew. He stepped in from right guard, played center because starting center Devin Kalani was out this game. Brock Dew stepped in, played fantastic. The offensive line gave up 1 sack, wasn't even on them. John held the ball just a little bit too long. To me, that was the MVP because you know how it is, Bump, that center, that's the quarterback of the offensive line. All the communication goes through him and then ultimately goes back to the quarterback. John Mateer isn't anybody without the offensive line. And for Brock Dew to be able to step in, again, from playing guard to go to center in this game against Oregon State, I thought that was fantastic. He was my offensive MVP. What about you?
Look at you showing the big boys some love, man. When I was, believe it or not, I played quarterback in high school, B. I was pretty good.
I've seen you throw. Yeah.
And when my big boys had a good day, we used to bring them burritos on a Saturday morning and feed them dudes. So I'm sure Mateer hooked them up. Since you're not going Mateer, I'll go Mateer because there's no one really you can point to. You know what? I can give Carlos Hernandez an honorable mention. In 5 games, he has 4 touchdowns. He's been really productive. But it's Mateer, man. 250 yards through the air, 2 touchdowns. 75 on the ground, 2 touchdowns. He is this football team offensively. You have receivers that he can throw the football to, obviously. You have the linemen who are going to protect him, but he makes this thing go. And once again, he kept us in the game. He did not turn the football over. He did hold the ball a couple times, which allowed some pressure in that sack that you were talking about. But end of the day, you need that Mateer magic, and he kept us in the game. And even on the potential game-winning drive, he made plays, and some other players made some mistakes that kind of lost the game for these guys. But it's Mateer. I'm going to beat that drum till it's all over. Did you know that Texas has their own award for their top college football player out of Texas? I just saw that today and realized John Mateer was a finalist for that award. I think it's like the Earl Campbell Award or something like that. Didn't know that, but that's fitting for Texas, though.
Yeah, well, yeah, there's no doubt about that. I did not know that either. That's very cool. And John Mateer is very deserving. I think you're right. I mean, other than, again, the offensive line, if John Mateer is not on the field, Washington State isn't anywhere close to being in that game or a lot of games this season. He is the straw that stirs the drink. 4 touchdowns again this week. He's the nation's leader in total touchdowns. I think at 42 is the number. 2 rushing, 2 passing against the Beavs. And, it was, again, the running ability was next level, right? He was bouncing off of tacklers. He was breaking out of sacks. I thought he was really good throwing the ball downfield again. on Saturday. So John Mateer was lights out. I felt really good about what he's doing. He's going to need to come up big. But the one thing that wasn't there for the Cougs, Bump, was the defense on Saturday night, to the tune of 41 points for the Oregon State Beavers. One man did show out, though, and I got to imagine he's your MVP, and that's linebacker Buda Alukta.
It's got to be Buda. I think this is the second time this year when we talk about the defense, it's hard for us to give them an award because you gave up 41 points to a team, like you mentioned, was struggling to put points on the board. But somehow they figure some things out. But it has to be Buda. He's got that pick six. Usually when the defense scores or when special team scores, you're going to win the football game. But that wasn't the case for the Cougs this week. But yeah, you got to look at Buda. This is his second or third interception of the year. He got that pick six. It felt like we were going to ruin senior night for these guys, but the Bees find a way. I don't think we can go any other direction but Buda.
Yeah, I think that Buda deserved it. 7 tackles. He had the most impact in the box, had that, like you said, incredibly smart play to step in front of the out route and return it for the pick six at a key moment in what probably should have been the game-changing moment for Washington State. Honorable mention, though, goes to the freshman corner, Ethan O'Connor, who also got a pick, which speaks to your point about turnovers. If you get 2 turnovers in the second half and one of them's for a touchdown, Bump, that should be the game right there. So the defense, they found a way to force turnovers again, but on the flip side, Washington State couldn't get to a positive turnover margin because of some of their own mistakes. So I think for the Cougs, although those 2 guys came up with turnovers, overall it just was not a good night for the defense.
No, it was rough. It was rough, man. And it felt like the Beavs came out and attacked them in a way that no one really expected them to attack them through the air. And we'll break all that down next and more, man. Where do the Cougs go from here? How do they correct their wrongs? Brink and I will break it all down here on Talkin' Cougs.
This segment is presented by Cougs First. Think Cougs First for products, services, and hiring.
Back now on Talkin' Cougars, and Bump, we got to talk a little bit about what the team's mentality is coming off these 2 straight losses. Obviously, against New Mexico, when you lose the opportunity to make it to the college football playoff and potentially an 11-win season, but then you followed up with a loss in Corvallis, and then you're left wondering more about where the season goes from here, but you're still 8-3. You and I have been in a locker room like this in 2006. We were 6-3. Thought we qualified for a bowl game after a win down in the Rose Bowl against UCLA, and then we go on to lose 3 straight. Unfortunately, you got banged up, and I'm going to blame you for not playing for a couple games because that would have really helped. That being said, we've been there, man. What do you think these players are feeling in that locker room and when they're in their meeting rooms?
Man, they went from the highs to questioning their existence. You know what that was like. You remember that locker room when we qualified at UCLA. Everything was good, but you lose focus, and I think that's what they're fighting right now. Can you stay focused? Can you remember who you are and what you are about? So how do you get back on the right track? It's about being honest. I do some work for the Seahawks, and when Pete Carroll was here, it was Tell the Truth Monday. So they need to tell the truth Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and just be honest with each other as coaches and as players and try to figure out where exactly did we go wrong. And you and I think we have an idea of where they've gone wrong. We'll point that out later, but it's just trying to stay together. Because during times like this, you can point the finger and cliques can develop, and now you're not that cohesive unit that you used to be. Here's the thing that's going to save them, though, that I think can save them, is the leadership of John Mateer and the play of John Mateer. It's not like they're looking at their leader and he isn't living up to expectations or he's not having the positive outlook. Everything that I know about John Mateer is that he's back to work. So it starts with the coaches. Got to have a good message. Trickles down to your quarterback, and he's the leader of this team. He's got to be the positive vibe and the calming vibe in this locker room.
It's an important point, Bum, because you're right in that there are ways that cliques can form if the culture of the team's not right. But if the culture of the team's right, you usually don't get those clicks, but occasionally you do get kind of the offensive-defensive rivalry, right? Whether things are going good or things are going bad. And when it's been the defense that's struggled the last couple of weeks and the offense has been productive, right, that's where you can start getting kind of the cracks. And to your point about John Mateer being for sure the leader of the team, but also the leader of the offense, he can be the one that says, hey, guys, we're all in this together, right? The 22 guys that go out and start on offense and defense, we're playing the ultimate team sport. And you can say that as an offense, you had opportunities to win that game also, right? Now,
Yep.
It's not necessarily fair to say you had to be perfect, but it kind of is what it is. So I think for Washington State and the leadership in general, it's saying, hey, guys, we still have one more game. It's senior night. We can still accomplish some incredible goals. And having 9 wins in the regular season and a chance to get 10 wins, you know how important double-digit wins is, especially when it comes to recruiting and on the outward-facing piece of it. So although yes, you didn't reach the highest of your goals possible, there's still a lot to play for, and I think that's the important message that you keep everybody into.
Yeah, and there was a message that the Oregon State Beavers gave me. I made a bet with our guys over there in Talkin Bees, and I had to pay up, and I represent it. Let's take a look at that conversation.
We have a special someone who, if I recall, is repaying a debt, a bet that we did, right? Is that right? Oh,
yes.
Who do we have there?
Yes.
Who do we have? Oh, that's right, Michael Bumpus. How are you, Michael? How are you, Bump?
Hey, I'm good. 8-2, 8-3 now. I'm good.
So you want to throw the record out? Is what you're doing?
But hey, I'm a man of my word. You showed up last year when we made this bet, and you wore red instead of crimson. So just to show the same love, I got that burnt orange instead of the beaver orange.
That's not beaver orange. That's not beaver orange.
But
I don't like
the
it.
red wasn't crimson, but I got the Pac-2 hat though. We're still united up top though.
That counts for some. Maybe that counts for a little bit. But you remember what happened though? We're not supposed to be friends. So the Pac-2 hat doesn't really mean anything.
No, that's for the dudes on the field. We good. Tailgate, we good. That was for Dick and Bray.
I got it. So off the field we're friends, but when we're on the field we're not friends, right? That's how
exactly.
No, but honestly, thanks for hopping on. Obviously,
sure.
I think this came as a little bit of a surprise to you. Hence the reason why you don't have the beaver orange. But I
wasn't ready.
but I think overall, I mean, it was a hell of a game, man. And to be able to watch the game and enjoy it, I think whether you're a Cougars fan, whether you're a Beavers fan, I think we both enjoyed watching that game because it was exciting. A lot of scores, a lot of offense, which we expected. What was the most surprising thing to you? Obviously, outside of the loss, what was the most surprising thing for you?
Man, it was the way Oregon State came out throwing the football. I believe Branson started off 13 of his first 13. It was perfect in the first half, getting Terry involved, the tight end, which I think you and I talked about prior to the game. Just the way they attacked WSU, and that let me know that they felt that in the pass game in the middle of the field, they were going to be able to have some plays. And they still ran the ball well. That was probably the most balanced game I've seen out of Oregon State. And they kept killing the Cougs with the same concept. Walker in motion, running the mesh, and our linebackers just could not figure that thing out. But you're right. It was an intense game, high-scoring game, and it came down to turnovers, right?
Yep.
And the last turnover kind of sealed the deal for Oregon State. So, you know what? I want my Cougs to win, but Oregon State deserved that win. They did what they had to do.
No, absolutely, and I mean, what better way for the Beavers to come out on top than to have we talked about it last week about the senior leadership, right? And one of the names that we threw out there was Jaden Robinson, right? And here you have him, come up big, come up huge in the fourth quarter, with that fumble recovery. And I mean that's what won us the game was getting that turnover late into the game because I don't think. We had what we needed in order to stop you guys from driving the ball. The only way we were going to stop you was to get a turnover, which we did. Get the turnover, drive the ball a little bit, enough to get into field goal position. We kick the field goal, and the place goes crazy. So you talk about having a lively, fanatic, environment, playing that game. I think Reeser was rocking. I think there was a lot of Cougar fans there. Obviously, with it being senior day, and man, oh man, just put that game, as one of the best that there ever has been between the Cougars and the Beavers, and man, I sure enjoyed watching it, and I'm sure that you enjoyed watching it as well too. So, thanks, man. I appreciate you paying out your debt. wearing that orange. That orange kind of looks good on you, but I think it would look better if you had a little bit more of a Beaver orange. But I'll take it.
Hey, I apologize. It wasn't on purpose, honestly. I just knew for sure I had an orange shirt in my repertoire somewhere, and then 4:30 rolls around. I'm telling my wife, like, I got nothing. But I also told her that I own one because my man came on wearing red last year, so it's all good. But in all honesty, man, I think that it was a great performance and a much-needed win for the Bees.
Absolutely.
Because when you start off hot the way that you have, and then you have the 4-game skid, you start to question each other a little bit. And Bray is building something, and you see what he's building. And unfortunately for the singers going out, it's not going to end probably the way that they imagined it. But if they realize that they're a part of something that's manifesting that could be great, then maybe there's a silver lining for them. And then for the younger guys, I mean, it was cool for them to send the seniors out. You know how it is, right? It's always about sending the seniors out on a good note. And that's what they were able to do for those guys. So, yeah, it hurt. But I got some Oregon State family, and, when it's all said and done, you can look at what they're doing at Oregon State and applaud them and tell them a job well done.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, that's a solid point right there. And listen, best of luck to you guys against Wyoming. We'll see what bowl games you guys go to. We have Boise State coming up, and, we're going to need all the luck that we could get with them and try and stop Genty. So, appreciate you hopping on, and there you have it, Michael Bumpus.
Well, Bump, I'm glad it wasn't me. That was hard to watch. Probably hard to talk about too after that game.
Yeah.
When we come back, we're gonna break down our play of the game and some of the things we saw from the game at Oregon State.
This segment is brought to you by Cougar Collective.
Back in on Talkin Cougars, and we're going to break down our play of the week. It's always hard in a loss, Bump. You never know which way to go, but we talked about our defensive MVP being Buda Alukta, and again, he had the play of probably what should have been the game, an interception early in the fourth quarter for a touchdown that followed a John Mateer touchdown pass. Cougs had all the momentum in the world when number 0 walked that thing in the end zone. I remember sitting in the booth looking over at Chris King and just saying, man, I feel like that's it. I feel like that's what the Cougs needed, the shot in the arm. And who else but Buda Alukta? Talk about the play. What did you see from the linebacker when he tried to break it down and ultimately made that play?
Well, I'm looking at my trusty iPad right here. You got a kind of like a balanced formation. You got 2 tight ends attached to the line of scrimmage, kind of in a wing spot. You got to go Branson in shotgun with running back to the left side. So receivers are singled up on the outside, one by one. You got Hall, who goes on a blitz. He's getting after the quarterback. I love the aggressiveness. I think it was important to kind of disrupt what Go Branson has been doing because he started the game, 12 for 12, 13 for 13 going into the half. So you get a blitz by Stephen Hall, and then you got Buda, who has curled a flat. He's looking in the curl, then he's rallying into the number 1 receiver in the flat. You have a safety over the top. So all he does is he finds Trey Walker. We know that Trey Walker is their best receiver. He's been making plays all game. They've been looking for him. They've been running outs. They've been running hitches. They've been doing a whole bunch of stuff, but he just finds work. He doesn't run to an area. He runs to a man. Go Branson doesn't see him. You step in front. Boom, to the house. And I'm just like you. I thought it was game time. I'm in the CW studios in San Francisco watching this game, talking about I cannot wait for post-game because I get to celebrate professionally, of course, because I can't show my bias on TV. But I'm like, I'm happy. I'm ready to go. But obviously it didn't lead to a win. But as a quarterback, what are you seeing? What are you thinking? How are you breaking that down?
Boy, it's happened to me before, Bump. I've seen it. And it's that feeling of, Oregon State had run those outcuts, like you said, from Trent Walker, from the tight ends, from the slot receivers all game, and they were wearing them out. And that's where I thought this was such a nice play from Buda because as a quarterback, when Walker puts his foot in the ground and breaks out, you think you have it because there is space between him and the receiver. But then when that receiver decides to sit down instead of continuing out on his route because he sees the blitz also, right? When you know as a receiver, when you see the blitz, you're going to sit down in that space. Well, Buddha's thinking, I'm going to push out to that receiver and push out there and get underneath him. As a quarterback, you see quarter blitz, you know you got an out cut. You're trying to get that ball out of your hand as fast as you can, and you just don't expect the linebacker to cover that much ground in that amount of time. And the two keys for Buddha are the recognition, because he gets to get a fast first step to go, and then he's just a fast linebacker to begin with, so he can cover that amount of space. And I've done it before. I let go of the ball, and I'm like, oh, it's a good throw, and then all of a sudden you say, uh-oh, and you got to turn and start running to the end zone because the guy made a play like that. It was, again, a really impressive play that should have been the difference, but that really was the highlight. And that was probably one of the few highlights the defense had, Bump, because you talked about Oregon State scoring 41 points. They had 38 minutes of time of possession to Washington State's 21-22, right? They dominated time of possession, and they controlled the clock, and they moved the ball at will. They completed between third down and fourth down 11 of 20 on third and fourth down combined, over 50%. They were 4 of 5 on fourth down in the game, among a ton of other stats. Those things stood out to me where Washington State's defense couldn't get off the field. They couldn't make adjustments to the scheme that offensive coordinator Ryan Gunderson was throwing at them. And he really kept the defense off balance all game. And I was just surprised that Washington State couldn't find a way to answer.
Before I break down what Oregon State was doing, I got to apologize to you, because I remember running a hitch, converting it to a goal, and you throwing it thinking I was running a hitch, and then pick six to the house. So I apologize. There was a flash, but I think it was Arizona or something.
It's okay. I forgive you, man. 20 years later, I forgive you. I promise.
I appreciate you. But, now going back to Oregon State, they realized that our linebackers didn't do a good job of covering the mesh concept or the deep cross by the tight end. Something about passing a receiver through the zone or communicating with a tight end as he runs that use some understand over Mike, they just couldn't, there was no response to it. So also our corners were playing so far off, man. You can run a speed out whenever you wanted to. And I think Branson did a good job of recognizing what coverage they were in, reading the mesh. Whenever linebacker doesn't run with the wide receiver or pass him off, I'm going to go to that guy. And then they started putting Walker in motion and doing it. It was, it was a great call by Gunderson. He understood how to put our guys in a bind. He did exactly that, and it has kept executing it over and over and over again. So we're going to look at Wyoming here coming up pretty soon. They're not going to throw the football like that, but if I am Wyoming, I'm going to run the same concept against us and make the Cougs have to defend it.
Yeah, you mentioned mesh, right? They ran mesh all day, and mesh is a staple it's from Mike Leach, from the air raid, right? You're running receivers across, trying to create a rub and a pick. It's great versus man, it's great versus zone. Now people have added in a second layer above it. It's a really difficult concept to stop. That being said, what disappointed me, and you mentioned it, is the DBs for Washington State, the corners in particular, who I think are good, Stephen Hall and Ethan O'Connor. They were not asked to challenge the Oregon State receivers. They were not asked to get up and press and play man coverage very much. It was a lot of zone, and it was a lot of zone blitz, right? And zone blitz for Washington State means they bring pressure. They're hoping they're going to get home before the quarterback can get the ball out. And sometimes they drop defensive ends out. So they end up as the ones covering where the linebackers would. So it's even worse, right, than a linebacker in coverage is a defensive end in coverage. And if you don't get to the quarterback, he's going to find an opening. And the times Washington State did blitz and play man or just straight up play man, that's when you saw the incompletions early in the third quarter. And then there were times when they're running those zone pressures and they're just not getting home and they don't have the right guys in coverage. So, again, I think structurally there were some issues there. I think Washington State got exposed at certain parts of their defense. And you got to credit Oregon State. There's no doubt about it. But Washington State, in my opinion, defensively has the bodies to stop a team like Oregon State. And they're going to have to figure it out, to your point. And they got to figure out how to do it quickly against a Wyoming offense that has struggled but is trending positively here late in the year. We're going to break that game down when we come back on Talkin' Cougars.
This segment is brought to you by Flat Stick Pub, local craft beer, mini golf, and old school fun.
Welcome back to Talkin' Cougars. I'm Michael Bumpus with my guy Alex Brink. It is now time to look at Wyoming. Man, this is an interesting program. We got some ties to that program, B.
We do. Jake Dickert, former Wyoming DB coach, defensive coordinator. He obviously comes back to Washington State, and now the Wyoming Cowboys are coming to the Palouse. It's a matchup bump that I think favors Washington State. This is a 2-9 Wyoming team that is obviously not what you would expect of Wyoming. Wyoming's a proud program, and Craig Bohl, who retired, is a fantastic coach. They're going through that transition, right, of kind of losing a legendary coach, and it feels like this team has been a little snake bitten. They've had 3 or 4 games they've lost by 1 possession. They took Boise State into a tight one in Laramie last week, 17-14. They beat a New Mexico team that Washington State lost to in a shootout. So they've trended, it seems, at times in the right direction. They have some real challenges on defense, which, again, Wyoming's usually a great defensive football team. They put guys in the pros every year. They're very hard-nosed. And this year they're having a really hard time stopping the run, giving up nearly 30 points per game. Offensively, they're also really struggling. Some of that has to do with injuries, and a lot of it has to do with the quarterback play. And of recent note, they made a transition from Evan Svoboda to Caden Anderson, who was kind of a shot in the arm for this team, Bump. And he's coming from, as a redshirt freshman, he's coming from a place you know well, South Lake Carroll in Texas, one of the best high school programs in the country. Tons of players have played there. Quarterbacks have played there. Chase Daniel played there. I think Baker Mayfield wait, hold on, let me go back. Chase Daniel played there. Quinn Ewers played there. Greg McElroy played there. Tons of guys. So he's done a lot, but he got banged up against Boise State. So you don't know if you're going to get him this weekend in Pullman. That being said, they also got back a running back, Harrison Whaley, who's a really productive player, and Wyoming's always a run-first team, and so I'm expecting that they're going to lean heavily into the running game based on what teams have done to Washington State the past few weeks.
Yeah, you have to. I mean, but then you look at the Oregon State game and you say, maybe we might be able to throw the football against these guys too. But it's a simple offense. They do a lot with a little, or a little with a lot, whichever way you want to look at it. To me, just follow the tight end. If the tight end is to the wing spot on the left side and he steps to the left, they're running to the left side. If he pulls to the right, they are running to the right side. They're going to follow the tight end. If there is trips and traditional trips to the right side, they're probably going to throw the football. If the trips is tight to the tackle, they're probably going to try to get outside and try to run a stretch or something like that. And then they'll get in their traditional 2x2s and throw the football. Obvious passing downs, they will pass the football. Obvious running downs, they will run the football. I think they're keeping it real simple for their quarterbacks and for their offensive personnel, and they just want to try to wear you down. You mentioned they beat New Mexico. We struggled against New Mexico. So what does that tell you? They have a pretty solid defense. They'll run that 4-3 defense. They'll bring that safety down to the field side. I'm looking at the boundary and thinking there's some opportunities to pass the football there, but they're a straight-up offense, a straight-up defense. What you see is what you get. We're in no position to underestimate anybody, but you would think that the Cougs should be able to handle these guys. But we shall see, man. I think there's one thing that's for sure about Wyoming is that they are going to play tough. They play in negative 20-degree weather. Those are one of the toughest teams in the nation just off of conditions alone. But and then they barely lost to Boise State. It was like 17 or 14. I don't know who this team is, right? They'll get blown out. They'll play close. They'll win a game they're not supposed to win. They've done almost everything. We're in no position to judge. We'll see how we do.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. You just don't know. I'm concerned about the defense because the last 2 weeks for the defense have been a struggle. That being said, Bump, if you think about it, there's been times where the defense has stepped up and made the plays when the offense hasn't played great. Think about Fresno State, right? Ethan O'Connor picked 6 to win the game. Think about San Diego State, Buda-Ukta picks interception to kind of seal it. Both those games, I thought the offense didn't play great. And so, you feel like the defense needs a comeback game in a big way. I think offensively, when you talk about kind of the more base nature of this Wyoming defense and where they've struggled. I think for Washington State, the team speed will be the difference, right? Guys like Chris Hudson, Kyle Williams, Carlos Hernandez on the outside. If they're going to come down and play more of a traditional 4-3, if they're going to bring extra guys, safeties down into the box, play man coverage, things like that, you're going to get out on the edge and you're going to be able to run. So I would expect the offense to have a big night. The question mark is the defense because you just don't know. But I think you're right. This is a good matchup for Washington State. And, we're going to obviously find out come Saturday. I think senior night is going to be a big thing. I think honoring this senior class means a lot when you talk about the locker room and the coaching staff and the motivation behind it, plus all they have to play for. When we come back, we're going to get a chance to talk to Kevin McKinney of the radio broadcast for the Wyoming Cowboys and learn a little bit more about this team.
This segment is brought to you by Valley GMC. See you in the Valley.
All right, back here on Talkin Cougars, super excited to be joined by Kevin McKinney, who I learned leading up to this interview has been at the University of Wyoming in sports information and on the broadcast for 56 seasons. Kevin, I really appreciate you joining us to talk a little bit about Wyoming football. You also are doing something really special leading up to Thanksgiving, this Thanksgiving week, and delivering meals. Kudos to you, man. It's really, really, really cool. Happy Thanksgiving.
Well, thank you very much. I really enjoy doing that, and I want to wish everybody up there in Pullman a happy Thanksgiving as well.
So, Kevin, thinking about this matchup in Pullman this week between the Wyoming Cowboys and Washington State, obviously, Cowboys coming off a fantastic game where they went toe-to-toe with Boise State. No moral victories at this level of football, but a win versus New Mexico before that, and then the performance in Laramie. I got to imagine Wyoming's feeling, pretty good, all things considered, heading into Pullman.
Well, I think so. I think, finally everybody kind of put things together. When the Cowboys were not doing that, we came into the season with very high expectations, and unfortunately, we didn't know it at the time. But we opened with Arizona State, and then we had BYU a couple weeks later, and everybody was getting down on the team. We didn't realize how good those teams were. So the issue was the quarterback position. I think they finally got that figured out. But the defense was supposed to be good from the outset and did not live up to expectations until the Boise State game on Saturday. And while the defense continued to play well, the offense just not able to move the football, not able to get points.
You mentioned that defense. I mean, been a little bit maligned against the run this year, giving up, I think, close to 30 points per game. But, was it something that they did differently against Boise State and Ashton Genty? Was it something, again, they've been kind of working towards throughout the year? What did it look like to you?
That's really a good question. I think that they schemed real well for the game, number one. And Wyoming had not played well against the run. They loaded the box and really dared the Broncos to throw the football, which they did a little, but they still tried to run the ball, and the Cowboys did a really good job of, Genty is so good after the first contact, and the Cowboys were able to bring him down in a lot of situations where I think in the past he was breaking tackles. He broke a couple, had a couple of straight arms. He's just amazing. But all in all, they really did a good job of tackling. It was probably our best job of tackling all season long. And, it was senior day. Everybody was gunned up to play, and they played very well.
Well, the Cougs saw a senior day opponent last week in Oregon State, so we know how the emotions can make a team play really well. You mentioned a little bit about the offense, the challenges at quarterback. In the past, Wyoming's been a relatively physical football team, run the ball typically really well. And coming off injury, Harrison Whaley is back, it looks like, and has been playing pretty well. Talk about some of the running backs and their running game, because that's a challenge for Washington State in the last few weeks defensively.
Well, Harrison Whaley is really a good running back, and he missed the first 6 games of the year, which was a huge blow. It was one of those years where the Cowboys just got injuries where they didn't have a lot of depth. They lost their starting left tackle in the first game, Harrison got hurt in the second scrimmage of fall practice. So I think the Cowboys are starting to get a little bit healthier. Which is about time it's the last game, but they feel a little bit better about themselves. Having Harrison Whaley back was a huge addition. And then Caden Anderson has really played well at quarterback. He was in a tough spot starting as he did. Hadn't played really all year and got a start and played well. This was New Mexico, and he was outstanding. But then, with concussion, I'm not sure right this moment whether he's going to be available or not. And, I would suspect maybe he isn't. If not, then Swoboda will come back in as the backup guy and he'll start the game. But he just has not been as effective as everybody thought he would be.
Certainly feels like it's kind of been, one of those years, quote unquote, obviously for Wyoming, 2-9, but a bunch of close games, 3 or 4 one possession games. Like you mentioned, a ton of injuries. For Washington State fans and the kind of Washington State faithfuls, they head into this game licking their own wounds a little bit off of 2 losses. What do you envision if Wyoming comes out and has success? What are they doing right against Washington State?
Well, I think number one, they'll be able to run the football, and with Whaley at running back, the Cowboys have been capable of doing that. If Swoboda is the starter, the Cowboys will have to go to the short passing game, and try to complete passes to the tight ends that are available and to the running backs. But I think in the main, if Wyoming's going to be successful, they're going to have to run the football against the Cougars. And they're capable of doing that. And then defensively, they're just going to have to obviously stop the run, but that quarterback is something else. And so he'll be a big focus for them. But in the main, run the football, control the clock.
Coug fans don't like hearing that. We've experienced that the last couple of weeks. Kevin, I sure appreciate the time, man. I know you got a little snow on the ground in Wyoming. It's supposed to be beautiful in Pullman, so we're looking forward to the matchup on Saturday. Thanks for joining us.
Well, you're more than welcome. It's been a while since we've been up there. We always enjoy going up to that program. We have some good friends there, I would have to say, and look forward to playing the Cougars.
One play doesn't win or lose a game, but there's a microcosm of some undisciplined play and execution, right, that hurt us, especially early in the game. So, but I am proud of our football team. These guys have no quit in them. I'm proud to be their coach, and we fell short tonight.
That was our head coach, Coach Dickert, man. He's got some work to do. It's been a couple games where the team hasn't performed, but you control your own destiny, man. You just win ball games and go out on a high note, and we shall see what happens. So let's talk about something we are no longer a part of, B, and that is the college football playoff ranking. We are done. We are out of there. It hurts our soul. It hurts our heart. But it's so interesting. What I love about this situation is that you got teams like SMU in the mix. You got teams like Indiana in the mix. They're shaking things up. Bama's on the outside looking in. You know how much that just heals my soul to see a team like Bama in the back struggling. What stands out to you?
Yeah, an Ole Miss. See you later, SEC. I'm out. I'm good off that. I don't know, man. I think to your point about the 12-team playoff, it's just so cool to see the mix of teams in there. How about a hot Arizona State team rising up, heading into the Territorial Cup against Arizona, ranked 12 with a chance to win the Big 12 and win that, get in to the playoff there. I think teams like SMU, obviously Boise, they're getting the 4 seed as kind of the automatic, or they get the bye as the 4 seed because they're would be the highest ranked conference champion potentially. I love this setup, and I think it's so cool. And I think for, say, like a team like Indiana, right? They've won all their games along the way. They face Ohio State. They get beat up. The reality is, I think Ohio State's playing way better than even when they played Oregon early in the year. I think Ohio State's really trending up. And Indiana would get a chance if they win. They would get a chance if they get in to maybe make a little run, right? And maybe there are good matchups somewhere else. And I think that's what's so cool about tournament style play. I think that to me is what stands out.
Man, I love that Indiana's in the mix, but I don't think they're that good. I love that Penn State is in the mix, but I don't think they're that good. I'm an SEC hater because guys like Feinbaum just put them on a pedestal like they cannot be beaten. They're the greatest things ever. So that's why when Lane Kiffin was kind of setting it up to where, oh man, I don't want to go to the SEC championship because we might lose and then get us out the college football playoff. Don't worry about that. Y'all ain't going to that thing anyway. I feel bad for DeBoer because I've met DeBoer as a person. I think he's a good dude. But also, this is Bama. You lose 3 games. The last time they lost 3 games was like 2012 or something like that. They don't lose 3 games in Bama. So things are all shaken up over there. I like that there's parity. And I think this is good for college football. And here's the thing. I'm going to say something that might be crazy, okay? I think that Oregon should and will win a national championship. I really think they do. They got the best team money can buy. I think the only thing standing in their way is Ohio State because they got some ballers over there. But I love how the SEC is all shaken up, how the ACC is in the mix with SMU and Clemson on the outside looking in, but Miami getting into the mix. I just like it, man. And then the Mountain West is represented with the Broncos. I am all for it. I was disappointed that Colorado lost, though. I wanted Colorado to get into the dance as well. But Kansas, man, the only team in college football history with a losing record to go back-to-back weeks beating a ranked team. They just jacked everything up, but I'm here for the chaos.
Chaos. Well, I think there's going to be a little bit more chaos. Here's my hot take of the week. I think the Miami Hurricanes are going to lose to the Syracuse Orange this week and throw the whole thing off. That's my hot take for the week, Bump. I love it. I love college football playoff. I want it to be chaos all the time. I want all the crazy. Texas A&M beat Texas. Let's throw this thing. Let's get really crazy with this thing. When we come back, Bump and I are going to put a bow on this thing, give our final thoughts as the Cougs head into their final matchup, Senior Day versus the Wyoming Cowboys on Saturday. Back here on Talkin' Cougars, final segment, Bump, and we got to give our final thoughts on what we think will happen this Saturday. The Cougs are going to win if.
The Cougs are going to win if they can get points off of every turnover they're going to create. I foresee 2 to 3 turnovers. I think that Wyoming, they're going to take their chances and toss the ball up a few times. I think they've thrown the football this year is around 30 times. They're averaging around 15 to 20 tosses a game. You have to get after the quarterback and get some interceptions. So 1 interception, 1 fumble, 14 points off of those. They have to get points off of turnovers if they can do that, or just create some turnovers. I'll say the points are extra. That's your cherry on top. Just create turnovers. If you can do that, I think they win the game. What do you say?
I like that point. It's not necessarily the defense needs to get points off turnovers, just the team, right? Because you think about back to Oregon State, Ethan O'Connor gets an interception, offense goes 3 and out right away. Yep. Then you get the boot out to pick 6. You only get 7 points off 2 turnovers. If you get 10, obviously it's a different ballgame. If you get 14, it's a really different ballgame. So I like that one. For me, Wyoming scores 19.7 points per game. Offensively, they're not very good, Bump. If you do not let them get above their season average in point total, above 19.7, you're going to win this football game. I firmly believe that. Let's see if that defense shows up. Defense coordinator Jeff Schmetti makes some changes, some adjustments. Maybe Coach Dicker gets involved. Either way, doesn't matter how it happens. Keep those points down because I think Washington State's offense is going to score a lot of points. That's a wrap for us. I'm Alex Brink. You can find me on X at AlexBrink10. I'm going to be on the call for the last one of the regular season with Chris King and Jessamine McIntyre up in Pullman. Excited to see it. Thank you all for joining us.
I'm Michael Bumpus. Find me on X, Michael Bumpus5, IG, Michael Bumpus5. I'll be in the studio, CW, doing the pre-halftime and post-game show for the game with my guy, Mike Yam. On Sundays, I'm on the Seahawks production team. Hey, that's it, man. We'll talk to you guys soon. Talkin' Cougars. It's a wrap.